Welcome to the Not Even Wine with Dinner podcast. I'm your host, Kristen, and we are here to talk about all things life, love, loss, and liquor. So let's uncork the bottle and get this party started. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to episode number 14 of the Not Even Wine with Dinner podcast. All right, so let's just jump right in. Today's topic is about aging and drinking. And I'm not sure what the title's going to be. It's either going to be something like aging is hard, but booze doesn't help, or nobody likes a drunk grandma because they don't. And what brought this up, let me throw a disclaimer, I guess, in here first. Just because you're, let's say, under the age of 40 doesn't mean you shouldn't listen. On the contrary, you absolutely should listen because this is really, really important for you as well. But nobody thinks about aging until they're there. And this is from my own experience and people around me, that we don't think about aging and the aging process until we reach a certain age. That doesn't mean that when we're young, we're not, using moisturizer or sunscreen or trying to do things to keep us looking young. Scary enough, that's becoming younger and younger because everybody's getting sucked into weird TikTok trends. And you've got, children buying, very expensive wrinkle creams before they've even hit puberty. But when you reach a certain age, it's like it hits you. It hits you like a brick wall. I don't care how much somebody tries to prepare you for it, like I'm trying to do right now, but it just hits you. It hits you all of a sudden. Not that it physically hits you. I think it hits you mentally and emotionally first, and then you realize what is happening to your body. A lot of people will try to give you advice. My mother, I can remember standing in the driveway. I probably was all of maybe 17 or 18, and she said to me, "Oh, honey, just enjoy this time while you can," and I remember Nana telling me the same thing. Nana was my grandmother. And, I'm looking at her like, yeah, lady, whatever. Can I borrow the car? I don't need your aging lecture. I don't know what you're talking about. You're just old. So, because, when you're a kid, you look at everybody like they're old. Anybody in their 20s, when you're in your teens, people in their 20s and 30s are old. People in their 40s and 50s are ancient. And anybody above that is like 1 foot in the grave. And then when you reach these ages, you kind of think, I'm not really that old. It's like it's all subjective to where you are on the journey. So when you are young, you think you're immortal. And again, that doesn't really come into play, I think, until you start hitting a certain like midlife kind of age. I don't even want to say 40. That whole idea of over the hill at 40 is total bullshit now, I think, because people are living longer and it's more acceptable for people to act younger and do things that younger people would do as they get older. I hope that makes sense. But, when you're young, you also just think that you're immortal. And so when you get these life lessons, you're just like, whatever. And it wasn't really until I think I hit my 50s that I started going, whoa, I'm getting older. Even in my 40s, and I think some of that is because women go through menopause, which is a very, very aggressive change in the body. And men actually go through what's called andropause. So believe it or not, men have their own menopause, but nobody talks about it and nobody even knows it exists. So Google that. Men, women, whatever, Google that, because that can happen. It's like a loss of testosterone and it changes moods and it changes things in the body and blah, blah, blah. But menopause is so extreme that it just kind of smacks you in the face like a brick wall. And then, if you're in your late 30s, early 40s, women, you start feeling the effects of those changes as early as your late 30s, early 40s with perimenopause. So I promise you, this whole thing is not about menopause. It's just about aging and how the body changes and the effects of alcohol on that. But I have to get through the aging process first. And, like I said, menopause is crazy and horrible, and it really does wake you up. It wakes you up. So what I want to talk about first is I kind of want to list out the process of aging, like how it affects us, and then how other people around us aging also affects our own aging. And this will make more sense, I think, when I list it out. All right, so in ourselves, the body breaks down, the memory is changing, you start questioning your life and maybe what you've done and what you still need to do. And then stress just takes on a different lens. You look at things differently, and the stresses are different. And I'm going to break these down separately now. All right, so the body breaks down. When I lived in Florida, I had a private yoga student who was a retired GP. And I remember her telling me, I'll never forget this. She said, people say age is a number. And she goes, and I'm here to tell you as a physician that is total bullshit. Those were her exact words. She said, yes, you can think you're young, you can act young, dress young, do young-ish things, but your cells in your body will break down. And that's what they do. They continue to break down. Obviously, there's things you can do to try to help slow the process, but eventually the cells in the body break down. So the body's changing, the body's breaking down. All right, your memory is changing. Again, you really start to feel that, I think, especially I don't know. For me, it was more in the 50s. I'm not saying I didn't have like moments of, lost words and whatnot. But again, once the hormones start to change, you really do start to feel that difference in lost words or walking in a room not knowing why you went there, not even finishing sentences, because it would be like me talking to you right now and then all of a sudden going, wait, what was I saying? Wait, what was I talking about? I lost my train of thought. That's the way that we say we forgot. It sounds nicer than saying, I just completely forgot what I was talking about. And then next is questioning your life. You start questioning what you've done. You start looking back and saying, oh my gosh, did I waste my life? I always wanted to do A, B, and C. Maybe I need to do that now. You start questioning your job, how you dealt with family or didn't deal with family. Do you have regrets? And then next is just things that happen. An illness can exacerbate that process. You start maybe having to take medications and focusing more on different vitamins and supplements. And I take 8 pills a day. And for me, that's a lot because I don't take any, well, that's not true. I have one pharmaceutical. That's the only one I take. And everything else is just supplements and vitamins. Like I've been taking glucosamine probably for 10 years. I'm 57. Ugh, I can't believe that. That's so crazy. And I know at least, I probably started taking it in my early to mid 40s because my knees started acting a bit weird and somebody said, try this pill. And I've been taking it since and it does help my joints. But you start thinking about all these things. And then stress has a different look to it because maybe you're now stressing out about your parents, about your family, about your bills differently, about retirement, about having enough for retirement, estate planning, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. And there's going to be another layer on this, and I'll get to that in a minute. But going into others, it's the same thing. And when I say others, I mean the people that you are closest to and that are around you and you care for and care for you. Their bodies are breaking down. And I'm specifically talking about parents and grandparents. When we're young, we don't think about those people aging. And what I mean by that is like, we know they're getting old, or we know that grandma and grandpa are old. We know we think our parents are quote unquote old, but they're just milling through life and we don't see them actively aging until they do. And it's like one day you just wake up and go, oh, wow, grandpa's in the hospital, or, oh, wow, mom's been sick more. She's having more headaches, or she's struggling to walk. She might need a knee replacement. And so you start seeing that in other people around you, which kind of you start questioning your mortality. And the memory changing that you start to see in your parents and grandparents is craziness. I'm going to get to that a little deeper in a second. They start needing help maybe they die, maybe somebody that you love dies, and we are never prepared for that. I don't think. I don't think we're ever prepared to lose a parent or even a grandparent. Like, they're older. We know the order of things should be a certain way, but unfortunately, sometimes there's traumas. But if we talk about just from an aging perspective, obviously, we think that certain things will happen based on a number. So people might die, and how do I put this? Worse than that, yes, in my opinion, worse than death is having dementia, Alzheimer's, a life-threatening disease, and having to caregive for somebody that you love, because caregiving is a son of a bitch, and it is a shit show. I don't care how much money you have. Well, if you have enough money for somebody else to do it, then that's a whole different thing, but most people don't, which means you're involved, your family's involved, or they're not involved, and that's causing a rift. Caregiving is horrific. And my mother had Alzheimer's. My mother died from Alzheimer's. And as well, my grandmother had dementia as well, but my mom had Alzheimer's, and it was brutal. And my dad was her number one caregiver, and it almost killed him. It was brutal. So I watched that. And again, that puts things in perspective as far as your mortality or immortality, whatever you want to call it. And so where I'm going with this, I have another one, sorry, that I have. I'm looking at my notes. Estate planning, that's a stressor on you as you age, like planning for your future. And then when it comes to others, dealing with their lack of estate planning. If your loved ones did not make a plan, then all of a sudden you're looking at yourself going, oh my gosh, I need to make sure I plan so my kids don't have to go through this, or my loved ones or whoever it is that you're leaving behind don't have to deal with the hoarder house, or the money that nobody knew was there, or the fact that maybe they cut somebody out of the will and didn't tell anybody, or didn't make a will, or didn't have a power of attorney, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so your level of stress changes, and you start dealing with these things you were not prepared for. This is where I think the whole age is a number thing kind of comes into play, because when my mom was dying, even more so when my sister died, and I'll touch that just briefly in a minute, but there's days that, I don't know, I hear a song and it takes me back to 1983 when I was hanging out with my bestie and we were going to Six Flags and riding the Runaway Mine Train and having a great time, or I don't know, sitting in her room listening to Duran Duran, and I'm just like taken back to being 12, 13, 14 years old. And so my brain is there. So I'm in like this great place of, I don't know, her name is Rio and she dances on the sand. Like I'm just bebopping around my bestie's bedroom in my head. Meanwhile, I'm stressed out because I just found out that my sister is laid up in a bed and they're wanting to put her on hospice when we didn't even know she was sick and drinking as much as she was. And now I have to scramble to get guardianship for her. How fucked up is that? I mean, so the aging as a number thing is more about what's in your head. And so where I'm going with this is all these things that happen make us feel like we need an escape. And if you're already a drinker, especially if you're a heavy drinker, you're not really inclined to want to stop. You want to just keep rolling because all this shit's now starting to pile on that you weren't prepared for, and nobody gave you a class on Aging 101 when you were in 12th grade. You just learn it trial by fire. Maybe you watched your parents go through it with your grandparents. I saw some things happen, but I wasn't involved. I wasn't involved in the day-to-day issues that they were dealing with my grandmother, or any of them, my grandparents as a whole. One died of two of actually, my grandfathers both died of heart attacks. So lucky them in some respects. And both grandmothers died. One had dementia, the other had cancer. And so they both died of a long-standing disease that was very difficult to deal with. And so I wasn't involved in the day-to-day issues with that. So, you see it from afar and you're kind of like, oh, that's terrible. Yeah, grandma's dying. Okay, that's awful and it's sad, but you're not involved with the planning process. And so these are the things I'm talking about. And that's the time it's very easy to be like, shit, man, I just need a drink. And the reason I want to talk about this is because it makes everything worse, because when you're aging, your body can't handle it. And, I did some research, and right now, currently, 12% of people over 65 are still binge drinking. Binge meaning like more than 4 or 5 drinks, depending on if you're male or female. I worked in the boating industry for a while, and it was when I went on my first bout of sobriety. So I would see all these drunk sailors, people over 60, we'll say 55, 60. I was in my 40s, and there's nothing sadder than seeing drunk old people. I would rather see a 21-year-old drunk than a 60 or 71-year-old drunk, for a variety of reasons. The older person knows better, and they just can't handle their liquor as well. I'm going to get into that in a minute. What sparked this was somebody I know was at a wedding recently, and apparently, grandma was on the dance floor, and she's not the most stable on her pins. She's in her 80s, and she's drinking, and she fell on the dance floor. She's quite bruised. Luckily, she didn't break anything. But it just got me thinking about that whole sentiment that I started with. Nobody wants to see drunk grandma. They think it's cute and funny for a moment, but then when grandma falls, everybody that's in their 20s like backs off, like, I don't want to deal with that. Nobody wants to deal with the old drunk. And I saw it at the boat shows. I've seen multiple people be taken away on the first aid carts or on an ambulance. I mean, multiple times, not just once, but because some red-faced sailor came up stumbling around drinking too many painkillers and tripped and broke his nose. So what I want to talk about now is I want to talk about how it breaks down your body, like what happens when you age and why this is so important to think about now. And let me add this in. If a 21-year-old or 20-year-old or late teens, I mean, they shouldn't be drinking, but we know what happens. So if a frat boy gets drunk and falls over, there is a likelihood, now barring any traumas, but there's a likelihood he's just going to get back up. If grandpa trips and falls because he's drunk, there's a likelihood that he's going to break a hip or get a concussion or die. It's that much more severe. I'm not saying young people can't be injured. I'm just saying that from a physiological standpoint, the likelihood of the older person having a bigger or worse injury is just much higher. Okay. So I got some information from the Johns Hopkins Medicine site because I wanted to have a few things that were very specific, not just me saying, hey, this is what happens when you age, because obviously I'm not in the medical profession. But I also did take a few continuing education CEUs as a personal trainer, and one of them was in the aging population. So I do have a little bit of knowledge, but clearly I'm not a doctor. So a couple things that happen to the body as you age is your lean body mass and your water content decrease. So essentially you're more dehydrated, which means alcohol is going to affect you quicker and more rapid, and it's going to just hit you harder. Maybe now instead of having to have 3, 4, 5 drinks to get you drunk, it might only take 1, 2, or 3. So that's one problem. You're more sensitive to the effects of alcohol. Your hearing and your sight diminish. And I don't care who you are, and you can tell me I can have LASIK. You can have all these things done, but it continues to diminish as you age. So when you get your bifocals, when you get your reading glasses, there's a good chance that maybe next year, it could be in 6 months, it could be 5 years, 10 years, you're going to need to increase the power on those reading glasses or on your bifocals. It doesn't slow down. The glasses help, but the eyesight continues to diminish, as does the hearing. Another fun fact, it's not so much about the drinking. I mean, I guess it affects it as well, but your taste buds diminish you lose taste buds. Maybe that's not the right way to put it. So if somebody wants to comment on that, I'm sure there's a more technological or scientific way to put it, but I believe it's like up to 80%. You lose up to 80% of your taste buds, which is why, if you notice, old people salt the shit out of everything because they can't taste it. So that's why they season everything so heavily, because we lose our senses. We lose our hearing, we lose our sight, we lose our taste buds, and our reaction times slow down. That's why you shouldn't be driving. That's why night driving becomes more difficult. Like I said, I'm in my, I still like to call this my mid-50s. I'm in my 50s and I don't care for night driving. It's definitely gotten harder. I have a very high astigmatism, so it's definitely made it worse. But you throw alcohol, I can't imagine drinking and driving. I cannot even imagine it now. And I did a lot of it in my drinking days, truth be told. As embarrassing and horrific and horrible as it is, I drank and drove a lot. But I certainly can't imagine doing it at this age. Certainly not even if I were like 60s, 70s, and people still do it. You know, you hear those stories about grandpa hit the wrong pedal and went driving through the front of the nail salon, and imagine trying to drink and drive at that age. So again, your reaction times slow down, so you're at higher risk for falls, fractures, car accidents, if you're, like I said, still dumb enough to drive and drink. Your medications can mix and cause adverse reactions, but a lot of times we just ignore that. That's any medication. You know, you're not supposed to drink on antibiotics. You're not supposed to drink on antidepressants or anti-anxiety meds, but I'm willing to bet quite a few people still do that. And when you get older, you might be on heart, diabetes, blood pressure, etc. medications, and you shouldn't really drink on many of those. So, and then lastly, it is linked to depression and suicide. The rates are quite high in the aging populations. So these are just a lot of good reasons not to drink as you age. And that's kind of why I'm here. Like the whole thing with Not Even Wine with Dinner, it was my sister died and she had a lot of traumas that happened in her 50s, I guess is when they started. And it just snowballed. It got out of control and her drinking got out of control and she hid it very, very well to the point that it killed her. By the time we were involved and found out about it, she was already at stage 4 liver disease. I don't want this to happen to anybody else. So if you're starting to head into your middle years or your senior years and you're still drinking, this is really the time to stop because you're not going to help the aging process. It's hard enough. I'm not saying it's all doom and gloom. I mean, we know what the end result is, but you know, we're trying to make ourselves as healthy and happy and strong for as long as we possibly can. And so that's kind of where I guess this is my PSA. That's what this podcast is about today. It is like my public service announcement about not drinking as you age, considering cutting back, getting some help, and reaching out and just doing the best that you possibly can for the one body that you have. Because we're given one shot at this, you know, we have one body and we are put in charge of it to take care of it. And so preventative medicine is the best so that we don't need prescriptive medicine or prescriptive movement, so that we don't need to go to a stranger in the form of a doctor and say, help me, because we abused ourselves. We ate wrong, we drank, we smoked, we did whatever, you know, we did all the wrong things. And then we go to a stranger and say, hey, I need to pay you to help me. So think about that way. You know, it's your body. It's time for you to step in and say, you know what, maybe I need to do something better for myself. So with all that said, if you guys have any questions, reach out. You can email me at info@notevenwinewithdinner.com or go to the website, notevenwinewithdinner.com, and reach out to me there. And that's it. So until next time, as always, you know where I'm going to leave you guys. Stay safe, stay sober. Have a fantastic week. Just a quick note of the legal jargon. I am not a medical or psychiatric professional, nor am I a recovery or addiction specialist. This podcast is for information use only, and I am simply sharing my own experiences with sobriety, drinking, mental health, and wellness. I'm not here to diagnose or to treat. So if you're struggling and you feel like you are in immediate need, please contact a medical professional or call 911. Thank you guys again. Stay safe, stay sober.